Welcome to the Selling to Corporate podcast, where we're going to be challenging your sales beliefs around selling to corporate organizations and help you increase your bottom line profits every single month. I am Jessica Lorimer, your sales expert and guide in this world of selling to corporate companies, skyrocketing your company sales and making the impact that you really want in the world. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show today, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a review. But enjoy this episode, and I am really looking forward to sharing some epic sales wisdom with you. Hello. What an exciting way to kick off October. And I'm coming in hot with a controversial episode about content, which if you haven't listened to the Selling to Corporate podcast before, you may leave thinking, I'm never going to listen again. And if you have been listening for a little while, then, well, we're going to explore some new and interesting insights around content creation and why or why not it doesn't work to sell to corporate clients. You might be thinking, hang on a minute, Jess, it's October. We thought you're doing epic and exciting things. And I honestly have been. I was actually supposed to be in Ibiza a couple of weeks ago now to do some business things and go to a retreat and all that good stuff. And I didn't go. And you might be thinking, but what? Why? Why are you not all over Instagram talking about your epic lifestyle shenanigans? And in all honesty, it's been an incredibly busy start back to September, both with our amazing C-suite participants and the action that they've been taking, the support that I've been giving inside that program, and with my own corporate clients. This is a super busy quarter for me. So at the point that you listen to this episode and that it's released, I'll have just finished up a week's worth of sales training with one of the awesome companies that I work with. When I started looking at my calendar and all of the things that I had planned in, I was like, I could go to that, but is it going to be worth it? And ultimately, no. What was going to be worth it was staying home at my weekends and using them wisely. So what I did instead was actually celebrate my birthday with a couple of good friends. We had a dress up as your spouse party. Hilarious. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen some of that. I apologize. And tending to my bees, I actually moved our bees into a new beehive. So, what can I say? Country living, I'm really giving it a good go. And it's been much more fulfilling than I ever could have expected, which is interesting. Because one of the things that has happened since we've moved to the country, and anyone who's ever been to Ripon in North Yorkshire will tell you that it's not exactly the country, but it's about as country as anybody who lived in London for such a long time is ever going to get. It's really interesting in that I'm learning so many things. I'm learning about beekeeping because now we have bees. I'm learning about going to running clubs with people who are sort of 20, 30 years older than me and infinitely better runners. I'm even going to an event in a couple of weeks' time, which is about sheep racing. Kid you not, sheep racing. And if you're thinking, oh my gosh, Jess, we thought you were like the ultimate corporate girly. How has this happened? I don't know. Answers on a postcard. Turns out, love the countryside, want to have Wellington boots and umbrellas and all of those good things. But my point here is not to tell you about how great life in the countryside is. I'm sure you're all very sold on that. But it's the fact that I started learning a lot of skills that I didn't have previously. And I wanted to start sharing those with people, something that wasn't about sales. It wasn't about making money. And so I started a little Instagram account. It's called North Yorkshire Diaries. If you ever feel like you want to see me in a beekeeping suit, that is the first place that you should go. And I thought, yeah, do you know what? Screw it. I'll start this little Instagram account because all of my friends keep asking me about the bees and about the things that we're up to and the crazy adventures that we're having in the countryside. And so I just sort of started it. And, I put a couple of posts on there and it's really interesting for me and for my friends who still can't believe any of this is happening. And it got me thinking about content. Because actually what I learned from starting an Instagram account about essentially beekeeping is that it's super, super easy to get thousands and thousands of views on Instagram. I kid you not, I put up one post about a local cafe and suddenly I'd reached 14,000 non-followers on Instagram. Don't even know how that happened. I had like, I don't know, 4 posts at the time. And I was talking to Owen about it and he was like, oh my goodness, like given a couple of weeks, we'll be those people who get paid to go for lunch at local pubs and things. And that has not happened, obviously, and we all know why. But it got me thinking about why everybody gets so caught up in content. Because, you know, when I was producing, or when I am producing this kind of singular post or singular reel about our country life, it's cool to see other people enjoying it and other people asking questions and sending, you know, in little messages about their beehives and, you know, stuff that I don't know yet. And that is cool. And it's a dopamine hit. You know what it doesn't do? Make any money, right? Doesn't generate any sales. It's not even there to. It's not designed for that, which is probably also a reason that it doesn't. If I wanted to monetize it, I probably could eventually. But it made me revisit this concept of content and why it doesn't work in the B2B space. And I think that sometimes we get so caught up in this need for dopamine because running a business is hard, that we go out onto LinkedIn and we create posts and we want the likes and the engagement and we're in a pod and we're doing whatever we're doing with it in the hope that something will happen, you know, in the hope that we'll go viral or that we'll get a bunch of followers or that somehow someone will understand how great we are, how cool our skill set is, and they'll hire us. Only it doesn't. And when I say doesn't, I mean it doesn't happen consistently. It's a unicorn situation when it does. And so in today's episode, what I want to talk about, which is slightly unusual for the Selling to Corporate podcast, is the difference in between the creation of content in the B2C and B2B space. I want to talk about why we're all wasting a lot of time on content creation in the B2B space and the practical reasons that it doesn't work. And then towards the end of the episode, we're going to talk about what you can do instead. So if you're already thinking, Jess, I love creating content, you will never pry me away from my computer keyboard, you would have to, you know, grab it out of my cold hands and remove it from me, then maybe this episode is not one for you. It's okay. But if you're thinking, actually, Jess, do you know what? If I take a good objective look at my business and the hours and hours that I put into content creation and what it returns in terms of results, and actually I'm not seeing it sign me corporate contracts every week, maybe I should be open to a different opportunity, then have a little listen open-mindedly with this episode and just think about what you are really looking for your content to achieve and what alternatives you might be able to explore. One of the things that I've noticed over the last probably 4 months, maybe 5 since I came back from LA, however long ago that is that the B2C, the business to consumer space has changed in a very fast and slightly terrifying way. And I'm seeing that not because I hang out on social media ever, apart from obviously my new B account, but because I'm getting a lot of multi-6 and 7-figure entrepreneurs who've previously been responsible for some of the biggest launches in the online space, who've been prevalent in the market, you know, huge lifestyle businesses. They're coming to me and they're saying, hey, Jess, I've got, you know, all these followers, but I'm not converting. Can I sell to corporates? What can I sell to corporates? I've even had people who've reached out and been like, I'd love to buy your course, but I don't want people thinking that my big business hasn't worked out. I think that's really sad. I think it is sad. And I'm always very careful that none of the details that I would ever share about anything are ever going to be personal enough that anyone could be identified. Because I think that is, you know, not everything is content at all. That's a whole different issue. But one of the things that I think is interesting is that the market is shifting in the B2C space and people aren't talking about it because at the point that they talk about it, they start to realize that they would have to do something differently. And there's always that fear, I think, around doing things differently. And the market in the B2C space has changed because everyone is tired. Around the world, we have lots of government and political changes. We have economic climates that are changing. Disposable income levels have really shifted for most consumers. And in all honesty, people are just done with the crap, you know? Most content in the B2C space, particularly in the coaching, consulting, speaking spaces, has been aspirational in nature. And I wrote a book about, oh God, it must be like 8 years ago now. I wrote a book in the B2C sales space, and I talked about the fact that there are 4 main reasons that consumers, so individuals, buy. One is emotional. They feel like they are part of somebody's journey. They feel attached to that person's growth and development in some way. And used well, this is people building good relationships and, talking on topical issues and just building good rapport with their audience. And used badly, it's people pimping their pain for profit. It's them talking about the most traumatic experiences of their lives before they've really recovered from them, and people thinking that they should pay them as some way of making them feel better and contributing to change. Then you've got aspirational. This is what we see most often in the online space. So we see this aspirational lifestyle. So we have the people who will have incredible life experiences and they will spend, hundreds, if not thousands of pounds on material goods that other people want. And I say material goods because obviously if it was me, I'd probably have like 1,000 handbags. Other people like to go on incredible holidays. And to be clear, nobody should be begrudging people any of that, right? If somebody's worked hard, they've got a ton of money, good for them. If it's possible for them, it's possible for you. That's, again, a whole conversation for another day. And then we've got, if we look at how that pans out in a positive way, that's case studies, testimonials. It's things that prove if one person can do it, you can too. And in an awkward way, in the online space, it's become very much buy from me because I have 1,000 Louis Vuitton bags, or buy from me because I'm going on an amazing holiday, or buy from me and you can have this lifestyle too. And people have started to realize that actually it's not real for most people. Again, it's a smaller, much, much smaller percentage. It is not available to everybody. And then we have fear of missing out. And this is the one that everyone talks about in the B2C space. It's this idea of urgency. And urgency itself is not a bad thing. And in fact, it's one of the sales styles that we do overlap with B2B. It's in the B2B space, we talk consultatively and honestly with our prospective clients. And we let them know, well, if you want a piece of work done, actually, I might not be available in this month, or I'm already fully booked for that. So we would have to look at this timing instead. Unfortunately, in the online space, a lot of urgency is false. It is, I only have X spaces for this program and then they sell more, or this is only available at a discounted rate for X amount of hours and then it's not. And we can go on and on and on. But here's the thing. The online space, with all of this content and with all of these sales strategies that have been used in both good and bad ways over the years, has meant that consumers are very shy, and it's meant that individuals, because of the economical situations that they might be in, because of changes politically, because of their changes in personal circumstances and disposable income, they've become very, very shy about investing. So we're seeing that launches are not going as well. And we're seeing that content just isn't having the same resonance anymore. And, that's because of the kind of mitigating factors that we see, but it's also because of the algorithms that people who are selling in that space are subject to. Nobody knows what Facebook's going to do next, or Instagram or LinkedIn or whoever. The whole landscape is shifting. And so if you are running a B2C business at the moment and you're thinking, oh God, I'm not getting the sales that I was, or I'm not seeing the same, figures that I would have done this time last year, well, don't worry about it. Market is changing. So you have the choice. You either adapt and grow, or, well, there are bigger problems. Yeah. This is not to be a doom and gloom piece, because if you decide you want to adapt and grow, you absolutely can. You just need to figure out, and especially in the B2C space, definitely don't ask me for my advice. That is not my specialism. But you need to adapt and grow and figure out what it needs to look like. And the interesting thing about content in the B2C space, which is where most of us start as business owners, is that it is prolific. It's always there. It's about creating more, creating better, giving more value, build all of that know, like, and trust. And it is just relentless. And sometimes it works. Sometimes for some people better than others. Sometimes for some personality types better than others. But in the B2B space, content is very different. Because in the B2B space, your stakeholders don't have the same amount of time or energy for the consumption of content because they're busy doing their actual job, right? They're not sat at their desk every day being like, well, can I make time to watch 3 webinars today? Can I just scroll the LinkedIn feed? Because that's probably going to give me my next big insight into how I lead my team. Can I just read 3 self-development books in my working hours instead of creating that P&L report that I'm supposed to be looking at and analysing for next year's budget spend? They don't have the same flexibility. And then when they finish work, what they are not thinking about doing on the tube or the train or however else they get home or in their free time when they're sat watching television, they're not scrolling Google or LinkedIn thinking, what content can I consume to make me better at the job that pays me that I have to go and do tomorrow? Because they're not in the same mindset as an entrepreneur who is, especially in the first 2-3 years of their business, super, super dedicated to it. It's not their baby, right? They're not as available for content consumption, and they're not expecting free content on the internet to get them huge levels of transformation. So they don't consume it as regularly or in the same way. And when we look at the content in the B2B space, there are two main reasons that content appears. One is this idea around thought leadership, which we see also in the business to consumer space. And thought leadership is really about establishing your own credibility in the market. And actually, this is something that companies are working towards with their own employees. A lot of companies are looking at how can we create thought leaders, or how can we get our employees to be seen as thought leaders, because they want to build brand reputation as a result of things like Glassdoor, the website where people can go on and say they worked for a company and they did or didn't like it, and they can talk honestly and anonymously about it. Companies are really looking to establish their own internal employees as thought leaders, but they don't necessarily have time to consume lots of thought leadership content from entrepreneurs. Does that make sense? Right? Now, interestingly, free thought leadership in the B2B space, I actually really disagree with on a number of levels. One, because it can lead into providing free consultancy for people who are inexperienced with running business development calls with companies and with stakeholders. And 2, primarily because of where you put it. So every media platform now has some kind of capacity for AI and is trying to train their own AI. And that really bothers me. So recently, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll know that I put out a post. Actually, if we track the stack, recently, if you do follow me on LinkedIn, you'll know that I got a top voice badge, and I had it for, I think, 60 days. And then they removed it because I stopped doing the things that had gotten me the badge in the first place. And I wrote a whole post about the fact that I got this top voice badge because I'd contributed to a load of their automated articles. So if you want one, you can just go and contribute. It's about 20, I think I had to do. And then they'll give you this little top voice badge. And then they take it away if you stop contributing. And it's their way of gamifying it, right? And I thought, that's interesting. And I wrote this post about the fact that I don't want to keep giving my insights, my intelligence, my protected intellectual property and copyright onto a platform that is actively using that to train its artificial intelligence, so that other people who are not me, well-intentioned or not, can go ahead and use that for their own gain. Because obviously, if you're not paying for a platform, you are the product. And just like anything, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, like whatever, you are training an algorithm. You are creating AI with them. And you can go and opt out of this, by the way. If you're on LinkedIn, you can go search Google for how you can opt out training their AI. I've done it. I know loads of people who have. Same with Facebook or Meta products, whatever. But I think it's interesting because if you ask your stakeholders on business development calls, where are you getting your key trends and insights, and where do you look for information? I promise you that they're not going to say my LinkedIn newsfeed. That's just not. The second type of content we see in the B2B space is content that is hosted by people themselves. So on websites, for example, blogs, podcasts, own content. And that's more interesting because that content's purpose is SEO based. It's based on hoping that a stakeholder will go and search the right terminology and find you, and then subsequently do whatever it takes to get on a sales call or buy from you. And that's more interesting. And actually, if you are going to create any kind of B2B content, I personally would focus there. As you can tell, I don't create any B2B content, don't even have a website for the B2B arm of my business still. It's been, I think, 18 months now. I'm probably not going to bring that B2B business back, B2B website back anytime soon, because I don't need it, right? And nor do you. But if you are going to spend time on content, if you do want to go on to, I don't know, write a book in your field of expertise and you want to get it published by a publisher as opposed to self-publishing, or if you want to demonstrate that you've got lots of expertise in a field, then, publishing on your website or your own content for SEO can bring you some leads. Does it mean it will bring you high quality leads? This is interesting. So when we talk about the role of content, B2B and B2C, when I ask people why they spend so much time creating content, they tell me it's because that's how I'm going to get clients, Jess. That's how they're going to find me. That's how they're going to know I'm credible. That's how I'm building awareness of my brand. That's how I'm building my reputation in the market. And I'm like, okay, cool. And always it's how I'm going to sell. But the interesting thing about content, B2C and B2B, is that the job of content is only, and we're talking about public content here, is only ever to attract leads, right? The job of content is lead generation. It's not conversion into sales. And particularly in the B2B space, content definitely does not equal conversion into sales. So when we look at the job of content and the fact that it's about lead generation, what we're really saying is it's about inbound lead generation. And that's what people really want. They tell me all the time, Jess, I don't want to appear desperate. I don't want to appear like I'm desperate for business or I'm really pushy. I don't want to proactively contact people because that seems like I'm then not busy in my business and I'm not making sales. I want people to come to me. And I get it. And I've made content for years, B2C. And, you're listening to this podcast right now. Like, who am I to tell you that it doesn't work? What I am going to tell you in the B2B space specifically is that inbound leads are usually your least qualified. So if you take nothing else away from this episode, just remember that inbound leads are usually your least qualified. And before you get upset about that, let's just understand why that is. Inbound leads aren't worth what you think as a business owner when you work or operate in the online business space. Because if you are a consumer, if you're a consumer for somebody else, then you're consuming lots of content all the time, right? And you, as an inbound lead yourself, you might approach a business coach or a web designer or whatever when you've consumed enough of their content to go and have a qualified sales call with them or move through their sales process, however that is. But because we know that stakeholders don't do that, they're not using content for the same thing, they're not using it for the know, like, trust factor. That's what they develop on sales calls with you. The problem is slightly different in that inbound leads in the B2B space are actually usually just junior employees who've been sent out to find 3 different providers who can give a quote for menopause awareness sessions, or a junior HR employee who's been tasked to go and find out what other companies in their industry are doing about a particular initiative or problem. Or a junior employee who's been tasked to go and find some stats about a particular area that is going to become a priority or that they want to take preventative measures on. The key theme here is junior employee, because senior stakeholders often don't have the time in their day-to-day to go out and find content and then consume that content. So they task somebody else. And you might be thinking, well, Jess, that's not a problem because still it's an inbound lead. I haven't had to work for it. And I'm like, yeah, no, get it. But unfortunately, what we know also about junior employees is that they have very little commercial ability to help obtain a particular outcome for you as a business owner. So what I mean by that is that a junior employee usually has no sway over budget. They sometimes, a lot of the time, don't know what the budget actually is. They often don't know any practicalities about a project around how many people are going to be involved or, what the historical delivery methods have been or outcomes. They likely won't have access to data that you might want in order to sell the best solution. So what happens if you get lots of inbound leads from junior employees is that you end up in this cycle of selling lunch and learns at low prices, right? So if you're sat there and you're like, but Jess, I've sold 40 lunch and learns to HR, business partners or whatever, that is cool. I'm not saying that it's not a good unicorn thing to happen. I'm saying that your business shouldn't be built on that consistently, because for every low ticket offer that you sell, that you deliver as a one-off with a stakeholder who is not in control of bigger budgets and is not interested in commercial transformations, you are avoiding spending time on business development with those people who could actually work with you in a more premium way and who could be responsible for helping you support their organization with a much bigger transformation at a much bigger price point, which would raise your average transaction value. It would probably also mean that you didn't do as much ad hoc delivery, which would mean that your sales process wouldn't always have this feast and famine type model while you end up delivering loads and loads of things, don't have any time for business development, suddenly have a complete lack of sales, making zero revenue, bounce straight back into selling some kind of cash injection, and everything always feels messy and difficult and like you're chasing your tail. That's what inbound leads does. Now, I'm not saying that there are not unicorn situations where inbound leads are good, where they have great budgets, where they are senior stakeholders. I'm really not saying that. What I'm saying is that is not the norm. In really early adopter markets or really rare or regulated disciplines, you might find that inbound leads can be super qualified. For example, one of the industries that came to me recently and asked if I would do a sales training with them, they were actually a firm of notaries, which I was like, oh, interesting. Like I've maybe heard the word notary, 40 times in my life. And so to be approached by a firm of notaries, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then I realized how many other notary firms there were internationally, and it's not a huge market. And they do really, really specialist work. And as a result, most notaries or most firms of notaries get a lot of inbound and qualified inbound leads because what they do is so specialist. It's a really rare skill. However, most of the people that listen to this podcast, like myself, not that I listen to this podcast, I guess that would be weird, but most people that I end up teaching, training, working with in some way are coaches, consultants, speakers, trainers, done-for-you service providers in industries that are not as sought after. Does it mean they're not as valuable? No, absolutely not. But it does mean that there are lots and lots of providers. So if we look at the more common industries that I work with or disciplines that I work with, I see a lot of leadership coaches. You could type in leadership coach to Google right now in the town that I live, and you'd probably see 5 or 6. You might go, well, Jess, that's not a lot, but the size of the town that I live in is small. So it's one of those things where the market is busy, and the more out there in your discipline, when you are creating your content, the more you have to compete for SEO, the more you have to stay relevant, the more you have to hope that those junior employees who are the unicorns find you. It's a lot of hope-based sales strategy. Now, again, not anti-content. I create one piece of content every single month for my B2B stakeholders, and that is a newsletter. I tell all of my clients to create a newsletter, a good one every single month. And inside the C-suite, I have a 36-page PDF on how to create a really good converting corporate newsletter. And that's why my clients book business development calls from their newsletters, and they don't just sort of go out into the ether, have a really high open rate, but nobody ever does anything with them. Because newsletters for the B2B space have the power to convert, because they're going to qualified leads. And if you do them in the right way, you are able to leverage sales strategies that will help you book business development calls that are qualified with qualified leads who have the budget to pay you, who are responsible for your area of discipline. Content that just goes out onto social media or onto the internet at large, it often fails to even reach those people in the B2B space. And that's what makes it difficult. It's not about the quality of your content. It's not the fact that you're not giving value. It's not the fact that you're not funny enough or smart enough or, putting up the best pictures, or you don't have the best hook, or I don't know, whatever else is going around these days. But it's set up to have a harder time getting in front of the right people. And that's what makes it problematic. That's what makes it a hope and pray strategy. So if we look at what we actually could be spending our time on, because I'd wager a lot of you are spending quite a lot of time every week on content, even if it just takes you 10, 15 minutes to write a post, but you're writing 5 a week, that's quite a considerable amount of time. We had an episode a couple of weeks ago with the amazing Jennifer McDonald Nethercott, who talked about the fact that she used the C-suite in an hour a week between November and January. So November 2023 and January 2024, and increased her revenue by 15% and her profit by 35% in an hour a week. If you're spending 10 to 15 minutes on social media posts for B2B to the corporate space every single week, that's your hour a week that you could have been spending on qualified sales strategies, right? And implementing those and seeing a difference. When we look at what we can do instead, it does come down to, well, rather than hoping and praying that we're going to get in front of the right people at the right time, we have to control that. And that is about proactive outreach. And I know that some of you will be like, oh, Jess, you bang on about this all the time. And, it's so boring. I'm not sexy. I'm not fun. And nobody ever sends me like a bunch of likes or engagement, and it won't make me Instagram famous. And I get that. I do. But proactive, proven sales activities will make you money. They won't always give you the dopamine hit that you want, but they will generate steady, significant revenue at premium price points with corporate clients that you actually want to work with. No, you won't be internet famous doing it. Some of your corporate clients won't ever even know or connect with you on LinkedIn because they won't know you're there. But you will generate clients, and you will generate cash, and you will be able to have the work-life balance that you probably wanted when you started your business, rather than feeling like you're tied to the internet and the apps on your phone every 5 minutes. And that is about using proactive outreach. It's about using measurable outcomes. It's about using measurable strategies that you can actually look at the data for and say, this worked, this didn't. This got me X amount of qualified business development calls booked. This didn't work as well, or this did work as well, or this outperformed significantly. And there are lots of different ways that you can do it, right? Inside the C-suite, I teach 8 different methods of lead generation. 8. None of them involve posting on LinkedIn. Not one. None of them involve posting on Instagram. None of them involve writing blogs for your website. Not because I hate those things, but because I don't want my clients working on hope and pray strategies. I want them in front of the right people, doing the right things so that they can work with companies on high value, high transformation solutions that are actually going to make an impact to an organization, an impact to the people that work there. If you're thinking about your content creation and the time it takes you each week and you're feeling afraid to let go of it, I get that. I really do. It's really hard to let go of a podcast or stop writing a B2C newsletter or, stop posting on LinkedIn every day, because you start thinking, well, what should I be doing then to get clients? If I'm not posting on LinkedIn every day, how am I going to make these HR directors or learning development managers see me? And the answer is you have to start using proven sales activities, not continuing with content marketing. You have to start conversion activities. All right. And I know I say on this podcast a lot, I'm like, look, you can choose to buy the C-suite. I'm not offended if you don't. And I'm not. You can choose to buy any sales course out there that is focused on B2B sales. And I'm not offended, and it's not my personal decision. But I am at a point where I'm looking at a lot of qualified professionals and I'm disappointed that people continue to invest in things that will not ever grow their B2B business. And that's not a judgment. It makes me sad, because then I get a lot of messages in my inbox from people who say, Jess, I invested £10,000 in this website. I went and spent £5,000 exhibiting at this particular event. I spent X amount of thousands of pounds downloading email lists from various sources that said that they could definitely guarantee me a certain amount of email addresses that would be interested in my work. Jess, I spent thousands on appointment setters who said that they could definitely get me calls booked in my chosen industry. And do you know what those messages all have in common? That thing hasn't worked. And that's because in order to sell successfully to corporates, you need to be spending time, energy, and sometimes money, if you don't already have a proven sales strategy that's working, on your sales and your sales development. I'll reiterate the message. I don't mind. It doesn't have to be my course, right? You can buy any B2B sales course that you want. I'm not offended. In this market, if you want to take your B2B business forward, you want to stop doing the B2C social media hamster wheel, you are seeing the same changes that I am in the business to consumer market, and you want to go in on B2B because you know that they are much, much more likely to pay for your skills, pay for your expertise, value your contribution, and that you're going to get to do work that's going to give you greater impact and that you're going to make more revenue, you must implement sales strategies. Remember, if nothing else from this episode, take away the fact that inbound leads are not worth what you think they are in the B2B space, and really think about what you are looking to get out of your content for B2B at the moment and whether or not it's likely to help you achieve those goals. So if you're looking for lead generation, think about whether there are ways that you could try doing it outside of just posting on LinkedIn and hoping for the best. And if you're looking for sales and you want to generate corporate contracts, think about what you're doing in terms of conversion activities, sales activities. Remember, you've always got to look at what you want something to achieve and the purpose of the activity so that you can make sure that you are matching up the best activity for the job. As always, if you ever want to ask me any questions about the C-suite or joining the program, please do feel free to drop me an email, jessica@jessicalorimer.com. I'm always happy to give you a good, transparent answer on whether or not it is a good fit for you, for your business, based on where you are right now. And I will see you in the next episode.